I'm Max Alain Gradel. You are listening to Le Beau Jeu.
Here's Neymar now. Cavani is there. Balotelli on the turn. Quality. Kalufa Kamano. Oh, what a strike! An absolute beauty for Florian Thauvin. Oh, the pass is brilliant for Pepe. And Thauvin.
The Saint-Etienne has surely won it in the 89th minute.
Ahead. Oh, what a goal!
And Kylian Mbappe wraps it up.
Hello, bonjour et bienvenue. Welcome along to the latest Le Beau Jeu podcast. Coming up in the pod, Paris Saint-Germain asked for forgiveness. Rennes give the capital club some English lessons. Marseille and Mario keep on winning. While there's an Arsenal reunion at Nice as Gilles Gremondi teams up with Patrick Vieira. We'll also be getting the views of Robert Pires. Joining me in the pod, I've got French football television presenter Darren Tulett. Bonjour, Darren.
Good morning, Matt.
Great to have you on. Also great to have David Crossan with us. He is one of the voices of Ligue 1 around the world. What were you commentating this weekend, Dave?
I commentated on the Balotelli, Matt.
Balotelli. We'll hear more about that later. And we've got our Australian Paris Saint-Germain specialist, the producer of This is Paris, the excellent weekly TV show on Paris Saint-Germain, Robert Thompson.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Well, gentlemen, today as the case is.
Robert has had an interesting week following Paris Saint-Germain. It's been a tough period for the Ligue 1 leaders who let slip a 2-goal advantage against Manchester United in the Champions League. They've crashed out at the last 16 stage for a third year running. For a lot of people, this was even worse than the remontada in Barcelona 2 years ago. Manchester United were missing 10 players and they still managed to win 3-1 at the Parc des Princes. It was a disaster. What has the mood been like, Robbie, in the last week or so?
Managed to win 3-1, Matt, without hardly having a shot at goal, and certainly not one without a lot of help from Paris Saint-Germain. Look, I think it hurts all the more because of the first leg, just as the remontada did. Things hurt more when you believe more. And there was a whole lot of belief this year with Thomas Tuchel and the charm offensive, with the players looking like they were coming together. Neymar showing he was more invested in the project this season. The 2-0 victory was such a solid performance as well. Look, and the higher you are flying, the heavier you come back down to earth. And it was a huge thud on Wednesday night. Matt, you and I were sitting next to each other in the Parc des Princes watching the game. And I remember saying goodbye to you to go down and interview the players. I was in a state of shock. I can only imagine how the players were feeling. It was just shocking. And then yesterday, first training session back, the fans. Well, there was a lot of miscommunication about what actually happened yesterday, whether they were invited to the Parc des Princes to come and watch as though it was some sort of morbid, come and, let's just make this whole situation a whole lot worse. I think it was important, the fans, and particularly in France, and we were just discussing it before we started, fans in France, in Italy, in Spain need to feel like they have a voice, perhaps more than they do in Australia, certainly, or in England. It's more of this Latin culture. They don't have our Anglo reserve, perhaps. They feel they have more rights. And I think they felt a right to go and insult the Paris Saint-Germain players yesterday, or just to let them know that they were hurting so much. And I think certain players felt they needed to express something as well. And in the end, it is what it is, what happened yesterday. The only answer really for Paris Saint-Germain is to answer on the pitch, no matter how hard it will be.
There's a few things to add here because, first of all, after that defeat, I guess this was worked out beforehand, but the PSG players had 3 days holiday. Which kind of didn't go down that well with a lot of the supporters. Oh, well done, chaps, have a few days off. That was maybe a miscalculation. A lot of people were of the opinion that,
Well, they did have their game postponed.
Get them back in the next day, punish them, make them train early.
Running, 6 o'clock in the morning.
I'm not saying that was the solution, but of course, the fact that their weekend game was off meant that the coach decided they could have 3 days off.
Yeah, as Dave mentioned, all this happened. They had the time off as well because their match against Nantes was postponed. So PSG not in action in the league this weekend. Adrien Rabiot got the brunt of the abuse by all accounts at the Parc des Princes. Rabiot, who was out nightclubbing on the Wednesday night
after the game,
and he has not been included in any of the games,
frozen out. I mean, this is all the perception, though, Matt. The same idea of of perception of giving the players 3 days off. They've been playing an awful lot of football, and probably for the best way to get going again after such a shock is to have a break of 3 days and say, look, let's get this out of the system now, try and forget as best you can, and come back next week fresh. Look, we have to finish the season. We still have things to win. Take a break. Let's come back. But the perception, because football is not like any other business in the world, the perception from the fans looking at it is, what the hell is going on here?
Robbie, you're very nice, as ever, to your PSG boys. I think there's a question of, personally, I think there's a question of respect as well, not just to the fans, but to your teammates. Yes, Adrien Rabiot hasn't been included. Was that the night to go nightclubbing and to get videos of yourself? Let's just...
Well, what was he doing nightclubbing, though? Was
Robbie,
he there to celebrate his a birthday of his best friend?
Know.
Was he? Nobody knows, Matt.
Let's focus just
perception
on the football, because the debacle happened on the football pitch. It's a real blow for French football. As I mentioned earlier, we were lucky enough to speak to Robert Pires, and he had a strong view, I think it's fair to say, about why things went wrong for PSG on Wednesday night.
I think when you play against Man U, it's a great team for forever, because it's not only, Man U is not only 1 or 2 or 3 players. It's the team. It's the pass. It's the Ferguson. It's the Cantona. So it's a big how you call it? It's a big house.
Yeah.
So that's why for me, I think for Paris Saint-Germain it was a big mistake to say, okay, we won 2-0 against Man U, and I think we have a lot of chance to qualify it. But no. I think we play. I think the guy of Paris Saint-Germain, they play maybe too more relaxed. They don't put the aggressivity. They forgot the spirit on the field. And when you Matt, when you play against English team, you need a spirit, you need a commitment. So for me, it was a big mistake about the Paris Saint-Germain players.
So it's interesting what Robert is saying. Effectively, PSG don't yet have that experience, the history that Manchester United have. Do you think the point is valid, Dave?
No.
Would you like to develop?
Okay, I'll expand on that though. Were Sir Alex Ferguson and Eric Cantona on the pitch? Was Cantona even good in the European games for Manchester United? No. Did those men in the stands make Buffon make that horrendous error? Did they force Kehrer to pass it directly to an opposing player? No matter how good your institution is, if individuals make abysmal mistakes like that, which they don't for the rest of the season, then you're going to lose. And for all that's said about Paris Saint-Germain, I do worry about them psychologically. I see them now almost like an Olympic athlete that knows that they're going to be judged around the springtime each year, and they're not managing to peak for that. So maybe they should be speaking to some successful Olympic athletes and find out how to do it.
Isn't that the point that Robert Pires was making, that psychologically they didn't go into that in the right mindset? They thought the game was basically won at Old Trafford, and that is something that comes with experience of dealing with these situations.
I think psychologically, I really noticed things in the last half an hour that Dani Alves was a bit like you, Matt, in the third set of a game at your local tennis club. He couldn't run anymore. If the ball came to him, he could do something okay with it, but otherwise, awful. Thiago Silva started retreating.
And he lost the ball as well for the.
Yeah.
I don't think you've ever taken me to a third set. Keep going.
Thiago Silva retreated towards his own penalty area. I was in the Nou Camp for the Remontada game, and actually the refereeing was even worse in the Remontada game than it was in the game last week at the Parc des Princes, because Di Maria should have had the penalty, if people remember.
And there was no penalty on Suarez. I was there as well. Haven't forgotten.
Back on topic.
Not likely to forget.
Guys. What do PSG?
Off topic. I don't think there were any refereeing real issues on Wednesday night, but
it's like issue at the end. No, the penalty.
Yes, but I mean, rule of the letter of the law is there's a penalty. The arm is away from the body. It hits him. He's inside the penalty box. Then you have, again, comes down to interpretation of the referee's interpretation of it. At first, he gave a corner. Did he see that it hit the arm? If he gave a corner, it means he saw there was a deflection. So, but that's not the point. I think this whole psychological thing, are we talking mystic forces? Are we talking strange, crazy things happening to Paris Saint-Germain? Or are we saying that they were excellent in that first leg? And how can you then justify being so good in the first leg at Old Trafford and then so poor in the return leg?
think there are two things to say. First of all, this huge and pretty justified debate, I guess, because they have gone out and this is a huge flop for them. But let's not forget that without that extra time, ball smashing into somebody's elbow, they're still in the competition, and everyone would just be going, well, okay, it wasn't such a great game.
Well, does anybody think that Paris were second best on Wednesday
either?
either?
Of course not. Of course not.
Manchester United were not in the game.
So, in many ways, this is also the beauty of football. One tiny thing, a shot which comes back off the post rather than going in, and suddenly we're ready to change everything. Do we need a new manager? How many players must we get rid of?
Do we need to change the rules of the game?
Penalty.
What is the interpretation?
But there is, as Dave was saying, there is a psychological thing. It reminded me of England's problems with penalties. The penalty shootouts that England could never win for year after year, even though it's different players. Then there's that weight of fate on your shoulders. You may be from a completely different generation. You may not have been involved in previous failures, but there's something going on, and you can't avoid it. And with PSG, there is this kind of feeling that, well, you know what, it can happen to us. I was talking to PSG fans beforehand, saying, hey, like United are decimated. You've done, you had a great performance there. You dominated. There's nothing to worry about. I was wrong, of course, like most people. But my PSG fan friends were saying, you know what? I'm not cool about this at all. I still think
anything can happen.
Anything can happen to us. We're capable of losing.
Is it to do with a lack of respect for the institution, though? I mean, Dave, you're saying no. It's not because we haven't won the Champions League. We're not this all-powerful thing. We can't make it happen. I don't think it's about disrespecting Manchester United. Perhaps somewhere along the line, it's about having a lack of respect for football and what can happen in football, possibly.
About not having a midfield as well, but that's another point for the summer, probably.
Wasn't there a little problem with arrogance, perhaps, as well? Because we've seen that or heard Kimpembe speaking about their preparation, and he was saying maybe one of the problems was that they went into this game feeling that it was already done, and that when you hear a player talking like that before such an important match, suggesting that in the players' minds, there was nothing to do, that it was all over and done with, pretty worrying, that a team of that level, with those ambitions, can go into a game in such a bad mindset.
Well, after the PSG debacle, Rennes got everybody happy again in France on Thursday evening, and it was a stirring performance from Julien Stéphane's side to beat Arsenal 3-1. They repeated, it was bizarre actually, on Sunday, almost an identical scenario. Rennes were playing at home against Caen, arguably less illustrious opponents. Caen second bottom. Struggling Caen second from bottom, but Caen took the lead through Casimir Ninga. Caen then had a player sent off, just like Arsenal did on Thursday night. Rennes scored from a free kick, Benjamin Bourigeaud. This time he didn't need the ball coming back at him off the wall. He played it straight in. And then two more goals. Ismaïla Sarr, absolutely exceptional, setting up goals for Adrien Hunou and Mbaye Nyong. It finished 3-1 to Rennes, just like it did against Arsenal. Rennes getting everybody feeling good in France because they were superb against Real Betis. They've turned Arsenal over and they're in a terrific position to try to go through at the Emirates on Thursday.
Yes. No, the thing about Rennes is just how under this new coach they have a feel good. There's a great atmosphere within the squad under Julien Stéphane. I think that's what he's done more than anything else, is just give them this belief and this renegade attacking idea that whatever happens, we're going to go down firing, we're going to go down shooting. And for the moment, they're riding that wave and things are working for them. They're not a club like Paris Saint-Germain or Juventus. They're not a giant institution that can't afford to get carried away with successes. If we go back to what's happened with Paris, they're the exact opposite. They're the AS Roma that need to ride this wave, this great feeling of confidence, and make things happen. And I think it's working for them.
They've got some lovely players to watch.
Romantic. Maybe more like Empoli than AS Roma. I see what you did there with the Rennes and Renegade. Very nice. Yeah, but they're on great form. And one of the questions is, can they continue to ride this wave? And also, of course, once the summer comes, can they hold on to one or two of the very excellent players who are doing so well?
Well, they're going to make a packet load of money if they don't hold on to the likes of Sarr.
Sarr is a fantastic player, isn't he? And he's been doing really well.
And he cost them a pretty penny as well last summer.
Yeah, he cost about 18 million when he joined from Metz. And he's a player who gets fouled even more than Neymar. He was butchered by Kevin Théophile-Catherine, I think it was, in a game against Saint-Etienne quite early in his Rennes days. What I really like about Rennes, they've got some lovely footballers. Clément Grenier's resurrection has been superb. I had my doubts about him physically. Was he able to play as one of the two in midfield? And he's done that really well this season alongside Benjamin Andre.
Benjamin Andre, for me, is one of the most underrated solid midfielders.
I don't go along with that, but there we go. We'll carry on. Adam Ben Arfa has been very, very good as well once he got fit, especially in these big European matches. Bourigeaud, the cut price David Beckham. It doesn't need to beat a man to cross the ball well. Very good from free kicks.
Got the same haircut, just about.
Similar, yeah, good footballer's haircut. And then, the pace and power in the advanced positions with Sarr in particular, but also Mbaye Nyong. And I'm really interested in the way that he's integrated Unu recently, because you're never quite sure what Adrien Unu's real position is. But he obviously applies what Julian Stéphan wants as the centre forward. I think he's more of an attacking midfielder still. But he fits into that system, and they're doing really, really well.
And Julien Stéphan, for people who don't follow French football as closely as we do, is the son of Guy Stéphan, and Guy Stéphan is the number 2 to Didier Deschamps with the France national team. It has been with Deschamps for a while. They were also champions of France with Marseille, and before that, Guy Stéphan was a coach in his own right with Lyon and other teams. So we have a whole family story going on, and Julien Stéphan was the guy that Thierry Henry wanted to take as his number 2 when he arrived in Monaco, and Rennes, as we can now see, quite rightly said, "No way, Jose."
He's clearly a very bright young coach, and he is impressing people, including Robert Pires, who spoke to us about Rennes' performance. Robert was obviously a little bit sad to see his Arsenal side lose 3-1 at Roazhon Park. But we mentioned those players. We've got Bourigeaud usually lining up on the left-hand side, Ismaïla Sarr on the right, and then Ben Arfa just playing behind either Mbaye Nyong or Adrien Unu, as was the case against Arsenal. And Robert Pires is really enjoying the way that Julien Stéphan is setting his team up.
He wants to play with the old school, the 4-4-2. But when you have the player, they can play on this tactic. It's amazing because you can attack with 4 or 5 players. Defensively, they have a strong players. So it's for the first season for him, and especially for Rennes, it's a great surprise. Yeah.
So, Dave, do you think Julien Stéphan will be as bold on Thursday and will go to the Emirates with those attacking players as he did at Real Betis, and they managed to win 3-1 there?
I think he should be as bold, because if Rennes manage to score, then that only heightens Arsenal's problems. I might take a slight issue, far be it for me to do that with someone of Robert Pires' calibre. I don't think it's a 4-4-2. Ben Arfa plays in a more withdrawn role. It's more like a 4-2-3-1. But it is good to see that attacking approach.
Shocking numbers, Raul, on this first podcast.
4-4-1-1.
Oh, don't go there, Rob. Don't do it. Don't do it. I think it's a case of Stéphan getting the best out of the players he's got available. If he had a squad like Patrick Vieira's at Nice, he'd have to play in a very different fashion. But at Rennes, they have these ball players. They have pace. That's the best way to play.
But you know what's great? What I find refreshing as somebody who has commentated goodness knows how many 100 Liga matches and seen 3 defensive midfielders and a lone striker and teams defending and defending. You know, we talk about this 4-4-2, whatever you want to call it. Ben Arfa playing behind a forward, 2 proper attacking guys on the flanks. Even the 2 midfielders. You've got Benjamin Andre, more of a sitter, but technically excellent. Clément Grenier has played as a number 10 in his career. These are really good footballers. And I haven't seen, let's take PSG out of the equation because they've got a ridiculous number of top players. But I haven't seen a Ligue 1 side playing in Europe like this with so many footballers, so many attacking footballers.
He's a young coach as well, which means he hasn't necessarily come through the French coach's system at Clairefontaine, which of course was so influenced by Jacquet after winning the World Cup in '98. This idea of playing for a result. There's no team that can play for a result like a French Ligue 1 side. They can value. They work out every match how they're going to get points. We can get 1 point there, 1 point there. Maybe we can get 3 points there. Anything we get away there is a bonus. And they plan their whole season for how they can pick up points left and right. That's not the case with this young coach, who also obviously has the players and decides, I'm going to play to my players' strengths. Most coaches will tell you it's not the formation. It's not whether you play 4-2-3-1 or 4-4-2. It's the mentality that you play with these players. And to tell your players, look, we've got this many attacking players that know how to play football. Go out and play your game. Within this system, you have certain defensive obligations. You have tactical orders you have to follow, but go and play your football.
And we come back to mentality again, because I think maybe not all our listeners are familiar with Rennes, who haven't won a trophy since 1971, and they've become, unfortunately for them, the perennial losers in France. They've made it to 2 cup finals recently, and I think their fans wish they hadn't, because they went to the final and they lost to Guingamp, who were their neighbours, Minnows, a little village sort of outside of Rennes. So it was a really embarrassing experience.
And a League Cup final loss as well.
And a League Cup final. 3 finals they've lost. They consistently underperform. But that mentality, it looks to be changing now, Darren, doesn't it? And they're going to need that mentality on Thursday.
Yeah, I'm going to be fascinated to see what's going to happen away to Arsenal, whether they're going to go out and play as they can play, or will they be hit by the occasion, and perhaps freeze, because it's not every day that they play against a team so illustrious and in such a big stadium with, hopefully for Arsenal anyway, some powerful home support, although that's not guaranteed. I think they can beat Arsenal. I think they can go through to the next round.
But it's one of those, Matt, like we'll probably be sitting here in 2 months' time and saying, oh, Rennes' season fell apart. They went out of the Coupe de France at the semi-final stage. They fell at the Emirates and they failed to qualify for Europe through the league. And you won't be saying as complimentary things. But everyone will forget what we said today.
Listen, I was at Rosen Park on Thursday, and there's something very special going on.
Gets around, doesn't he, Matt?
I had 3 galette saucisses, because I've heard so much about these.
Did you go to the one just next to the away fans' entrance? The one opposite the car park there, where the players arrive? That's my personal favourite at Rosen Park.
I got
the yellow and green one.
The famous galette saucisse. You have to explain to people what
that is. It's basically like a savoury crepe with a sausage inside. And
I go with just mustard, personally.
The lady said to me, do you want it nature? Which sort of means plain. So I was like, I wasn't sure what she was going to throw in. So I said, oui, nature. And then she just gave it to me. It was all a bit dry. So I had to go back and say, can I get a bit of ketchup in that, please? So I had 1 outside the main stand and then 2 in the press area.
It's probably why you've got those problems in the 3rd set, Matt.
Yeah, but apart from the galette saucisse, the atmosphere, absolutely electric, 35,000 people. And Arsenal, I think Unai Emery warned them. I think Aubameyang and Lacazette knew that it was going to be a tough game, but I think they were still surprised by what hit them in Brittany last Thursday. Moving on, Marseille in terrific form at the moment. Really an incredible turnaround. I think it's 5 wins and 1 draw now in 6. But Dave, you had the pleasure or not of commentating their game against Nice. I saw it. They won 1-0. It was Mario Balotelli's big night, really, playing against his former team. But, well, Balotelli delivered, didn't he? He headed in, I think it was a cross from Lucas Ocampos. Marseille ran out 1-0 victors, an important win for them, but there wasn't a lot in this game.
No, 50,000 plus crowd, Derby du Sud, massive match, the Balotellico.
Is it only you calling it the Balotellico? Or?
If you read La Provence, which I know you do from time to time, Matt, the local Marseille newspaper, they were all over the Balotellico. Interestingly enough, and I know you like it if I give you a stat, Matt, Balotelli's now scored as many goals for Marseille as he scored against them for Nice. He scored in every game he's ever played at the Velodrome, twice for Nice, and now 4 times for Marseille, first player to score in his first 4 home games for 45 years. But you're right, it was not a great spectacle, this Sunday evening game. Probably best watched in a 90-second highlights form, just so you can see Thauvin curling one towards the top corner and Benitez tipping it over, and then just look at the goal and the paper, scissors, stone celebration of Balotelli and Thauvin, which they've been working on in training. Yeah,
that was impressive. So after the iPhone celebration the weekend before, Balotelli got the paper, scissors, stones going. Dave, any ideas because there's a big game coming up? We'll talk about that next Sunday, PSG against Marseille. What will Mario do if he scores at the Parc des Princes?
Well, I know Mario's an avid listener to this show, Florian Thauvin as well. So when they listen after training, I do have a suggestion for them that it involves Balotelli's reputation from his Manchester City days and a tribute to the late prodigy singer Keith Flint. That Balotelli is the fire starter. We know that. So that they can work on this elaborate routine. And Adil Rami doesn't have much to do these days because he wasn't even on the bench against Nice. But we know he's handy with a fire extinguisher. And that his girlfriend Pamela Anderson has life-saving skills, so maybe they could be on hand after Balotelli and Tovan start some fire, maybe with some flint. You see what I'm doing here? Keith Flint, some flint, get the fire going, and then Rami and Pamela Anderson can come along with the fire extinguisher and sort it all out. And I'm sure the Parc des Princes would love it.
I love
definitely
it
go
already.
around the world.
Well, I think we'd all love it. You obviously didn't have too much to go on during the match yesterday, Dave.
Had a lot of
weren't that
thinking
many
time.
chances.
Nice work, Dave.
Yeah,
But-
bonus
But
point.
it
for
is
Dave.
fascinating. Mario Balotelli is one of these guys. It just absolutely fascinates us. He was hopeless for Nice in the first half of the season, and some of his teammates have dared, to say in the press this week, how they were so disappointed in him.
They had a little on-pitch dispute with Malong Sarr,
With
the
Sarr,
20-year-old
yes.
defender, who came out and said he leaves me indifferent. We're actually angry with him. Most of the other Nice players had quite warm words, but towards the end of the game, they had to be separated by Valère Germain, another former Nice player, very diplomatic sort, because Balotelli was saying to Sarr, "Why did you say that?"
Yeah, but you can totally understand why he said that. I mean, he obviously he does come across as like the kind of guy who everyone loves to have in their team. And before the game, hats off to him. He went over and greeted every player
On the bench.
and everybody on the bench at the Nice side to say hi and everything. And he seems like the guy you want on your side. But like I was saying, with Nice this season, he's been hopeless. He was just wandering around, wasn't he?
But the first two
Contributing
seasons at
nothing.
Nice, his first two seasons at Nice, he was a hero.
Yes.
He was an absolute legend. I think that's why perhaps the fans and probably some of the players like Malong Sarr feel all the more
The
betrayed
disappointment, of
by him
course.
because he wanted to go to Marseille last summer. The move didn't happen. And when you have a move like that where you don't show up to training, when you're doing your medical in summer at the Commandery in Marseille, and then you come back because the deal doesn't happen and you don't score a single goal and you're overweight and you're clearly not making the effort, all of that, the betrayal is all the greater.
He's a short-term guy. He needs the buzz and the adrenaline of something new regularly. It's a bit like a kid who needs new toys all the time. He's arrived at Marseille, and we knew it was total hit or miss. Either he's going to be a complete flop from the beginning, and he would turn the crowd against him very quickly. And this is a crowd that does turn against you extremely fast. But if you're performing and if you're scoring goals, then they will put you on a pedestal and they will love you to bits. And he is feeding off that right now and absolutely loving it.
Just thinking back, Darren, to your anecdote you told us recently about you on the Vieux Port being carried above the Marseille supporters' shoulders. So you know what it's like to be adored.
The fervour of Marseille is quite something.
Was there a chance you were hit or miss, Darren, that day in Marseille?
100%.
It was either you were going to be up there or a flop.
There was an incredible sequence on French television recently where Balotelli was sitting on the steps at the training ground talking to Patrick Vieira, and Balotelli was saying, "I'm fed up training with these guys. They haven't given me one good pass all afternoon. I want to go and play for a big club." It was amazing that it got leaked, and clearly his motivation had gone in the first half of the season. What I want to know, Robbie, is he going to kick on now? Because 5 goals, he's got Marseille up in 4th. They're only 3 points behind Lyon. They could qualify for the Champions League. They could finish in the top 3. Is Marseille the club for him? And is Rudy Garcia the manager for him? Because Garcia was getting a lot of stick during that 2 or 3 month period when Marseille couldn't win. All the fans wanted him out. Our producer Ian has asked me if I think Rudy Garcia is perhaps a little bit like Jurgen Klopp insofar as he's very passionate and hot-tempered. I think he's certainly good at queuing up the excuses like Jurgen is at the moment. Sorry about that, Liverpool fans. But Robbie, is this going to kick on now, Balotelli and Marseille?
I think he is, because there's no doubt Marseille have the talent around Mario Balotelli. I think what they lacked this season was that focal point for all their build-up play. They've got wide men like Pires, like Ocampos, like Thauvin that can supply ammunition in, but all they had was Mitroglou or Germain. I like Valère Germain. I think he's an intelligent footballer, but he lacks the power and the speed to play alone or to be your central striker. He's a complement to another big man. Mitroglou wasn't that player, and I think Balotelli is. And when you have that focal point, it just shows you, perhaps, for people listening as well, you can have 10 pieces of a puzzle. If you don't have that 11th piece of the puzzle, then your puzzle is not complete. It's obvious, but simple. And here, Rudy Garcia has wanted Balotelli for a long time. He's obviously got the Italian link from having coached in Italy as well. He knows how to bring in these players. He worked with Eden Hazard. He brought the best out of him. He brought the best out of Gervinho, who we never saw the best of again as well. Another mercurial player at Lille when they won the league. Now he's got this player that he knows how to talk to him. He knows how to bring the best out of these players. I think Balotelli and Rudy Garcia is a perfect mix.
Well, we talked about Marseille's attacking options. It's much tougher for Patrick Vieira at Nice. They were defeated 1-0 at the Velodrome. They've scored just 2 goals in their last 6. I would say they're missing Balotelli, but he didn't contribute much in the first half of the season. But again, I'll go to you, Dave, because you commentated this game. Alain Saint-Maximin, pretty much the only threat at Nice these days. Do you feel for Patrick Vieira? I should say they're 9th in the league. Vieira's had a lot to contend with this season. The club president is stepping down. He's had issues with Balotelli. They sold good players last summer, like Alassane Playa.
That's probably they're missing more than Balotelli.
Jean-Michel Seri as well. Do you think Vieira is doing a good job? And should Nice be scoring more goals, or is it just a case of they don't have the forwards?
I think he's doing really well. I alluded to this earlier when we were talking about Julian Stéphan. He doesn't have the players to play attacking football. They've only scored 20 goals this season. Saint-Maximin's got 6 of them. He's managed to turn those 20 goals into 40 points. They've only conceded 28 goals. Benitez had a spell earlier in the season where he went unbeaten for nearly 650 minutes. You can't do much more, but you also can't expect Saint-Maximin to get the ball on halfway, dribble past everyone and score a goal, which seems to be their only route to scoring at the moment. And he did have one run from halfway against Marseille, which ended with him firing a shot straight at Mandanda. And Marseille knew, stop Saint-Maximin, you stop Nice. And the young forwards that they've got in their books, Ganago and Maulida were injured, but they don't score anyway. It's really tricky for Vieira. It's something that Gauthier Ganay, the new president, who's only 31, which makes me feel really old, has to address in the summer, probably by selling Saint-Maximin and then spending the money wisely.
Yeah, this is a big turning point and a big test for Nice now, because they've been building something interesting down there on the south coast. They had their new stadium, really great
new training centre as well.
Yeah, so everything's in place for them to step up. Now is the ambition there, and by ambition, of course, we mean money, because they need to invest on the playing side now. It's no good having all those facilities if you're not going to get the players in to move up the table and start threatening and playing for European places. This is why I guess Vieira joined, because there is that desire down there, and there's a fan base and a stadium and everything. But this season he's really having to struggle, and I'm kind of encouraged to see that he's brought in Gilles Grimondi, because that means that he's banking on staying there for a while.
You mentioned, Darren, Gilles Grimondi is coming in. They're going to need to buy well this summer if Vieira is going to kick on. So we're going to hear now from Robert Pires, who of course knows Patrick Vieira incredibly well and also knows Gilles Grimondi, the new technical director of Nice, very well.
You know, Gilles, he was a scout for Arsenal since a long, long time, especially for Arsène Wenger. So all the players in France, he knows. He can watch some games, some players. And if Patrick say, yeah, I need to Gilles, it's because Gilles, I think they can help Patrick for maybe to build a good team for the next season. So for Patrick and for Nice to signing Gilles Grimondi, yes, is a good news.
Now moving on, another big European game coming up this week for Olympique Lyonnais. Lyon, who just blow hot and cold week in, week out this season. They were 2-0 up away to Strasbourg. Moussa Dembélé continuing his really good form in front of goal with 2 goals. It looked like they were cruising, but then what happened? They conceded 2 goals in a minute against Strasbourg. They drew 2-2, which could be a costly result for them, because Strasbourg taking those 2 points off Lyon, and Lyon losing ground on Lille in the battle for Champions League qualification. It's a big week for them. Darren, they're going into this Barcelona game after a 0-0 draw in the first leg. First of all, do you think the weekend is going to prove a setback for them psychologically going into this game?
No, I don't think so, Matt. They've been doing this all season, and it doesn't seem to make any difference one game to the next. I was at the home game between Lyon and Barcelona, and Lyon played really well in the first 45 minutes, and then physically they suffered afterwards, and that was to be expected.
Well, you're always going to
didn't
suffer against Barcelona,
exactly.
aren't you? I mean, you don't
they,
have the
they,
football.
they nicked the ball and wouldn't give it back, which is not very polite when you're playing on someone else's pitch. But anyway, Lyon held on, and a 0-0 result isn't so bad, really, because you know what the situation is now. If they manage to score a goal, then Barcelona have to get two. So why not go there with a little bit of hope? And I'm fueled. My hope is fueled by what they did already this season in the Champions League. You know, they were the first team to win against Manchester City. They performed brilliantly away to the English club and really seized their opportunities. When they had a chance, they put it away. They defended really well, and they have some great players in midfield who can, on their day, rival any other team. My worry is that they are young, those midfielders, Ndombele and Aouar and Toussaint, if he plays. They're very inexperienced at this level. It's one of those nights they could crack, and they could be beaten 5-0. But if everything goes to plan and they have a little bit of luck, they could also pull off a major shock.
Of course they could, and they also have a man by the name of Memphis Depay, who has always said he should be playing for someone like Barcelona, if even there, maybe not quite good enough for him, because he is one of the greatest players in the world by his own opinion. And look, this is, if ever there was a time to show it and to do it, this is it. And I think he can do it. I think Memphis Depay is a superb player, and now he has to show, you know, actions speak louder than words. Now he has to do it. I think he can, and why not?
And I think it goes back to what we were talking about at the top of the pod, having that culture, having that European experience. And actually, Lyon do have that more than Paris Saint-Germain. Perhaps not this current Lyon team, but the football club. I used to go working on their games when Juninho was pinging in free kicks against Real Madrid, when they were putting 7 goals past Werder Bremen with Michael Essien. And I think what they've done, I'm not going to compare Lyon with Manchester United, but you do see guys who were there, like Chris, like Claudio Casaper, who were still part of the club's coaching staff and passing on that knowledge. One man who certainly has European culture is Lyon's right back, Rafael da Silva, who actually won the Champions League in a sort of watching brief. It was just after he signed for Manchester United that United won the Champions League. He's playing for Lyon these days, and he gave us his thoughts ahead of Wednesday's big game.
After everything we achieved against the biggest team this season, of course Barcelona is different, but we know we couldn't do something. You know, we know we have the team to surprise everybody. And I think that's the case. That was the case in this game. You know, we had the chance. Of course, Barcelona have many chances as well just to score, but still the game was 0-0, and we know over there now we have the chance because we have quality players to win. It's 11 against 11, and let's see what's happened.
David Crossan, you've been watching Lyon a lot this season. How do you think they should approach this game? Obviously, if they can get the away goal after a 0-0 draw in the first leg, that would put them in a strong position.
It would, but Bruno Genesio is going to be starting looking at his team lineup with the defence because Marcelo went off injured at the weekend against Strasbourg. It's going to be touch and go as to whether he can play, a little bit similar to Jason Denayer before the first leg against Barcelona. And I hope for Lyon's sake that Marcelo does recover, even if he's not having as good a season this season as he did last campaign, because otherwise they're going to have to play someone out of position. Martial has been converted into a centre-half in a bit of the way that Jeremy Morel was converted from left-back to a centre-half, more in a three-man defence, as Rob says, and he's the most likely understudy should Marcelo not make it. And I think if Marcelo doesn't make it, that will seriously diminish Lyon's chances of going through. Otherwise, yes, they do have to attack, but they also have to be careful not to leave as much space in behind Ndombele and Aouar as they did in the first leg, which allowed Barca's attackers just to run straight at Denayer and Marcelo.
It's the key, isn't it? We talk about Rennes and how they have to attack. Do you do that against Barcelona? I'm not sure that's such a good idea because you know that they're going to have the football. Even if you're used to playing with 60% of the ball, you know against Barcelona you're not going to have the football. That's just the way it is. I'm not sure going all out attack because, as Darren just said, they're young midfielders. Aouar and Ndombele are great going forward, great linking with attack. You've got pace in Cornet and Traore. You've got guile with Depay. You've got Fekir, who's a superb player as well. You've got Moussa Dembele, who can score goals. Everything says this side should be one that should go out and attack. I'm not sure that's the answer, though. But Genesio has also shown that when they need to batten down the hatches, they can as well, like they did at City.
But surely, that's what I was going to say. They have the example, don't they, of that match at Manchester City where they played football but in a very organised way, and their counter-attacking that day was absolutely superb. And, you know, Manchester City and Barcelona are not identical, but they have the Pep Guardiola thing in common. And, you know, Lyon, if they can do that, you mentioned Nabil Fekir. Jean-Michel Aulas, the Lyon president, always says he's Lionel Messi. The chance for him to show that.
Yeah, well, this is the stage for Fekir, and he really does have to show the world, you know, what he's capable of. Last summer, of course, he was very close to signing for Liverpool. That fell through. It took him a little while to get over that. He was with the French at the World Cup, of course, without really playing a great deal. He is a superb player, but physically, we always have a little worry about him. You know, he needs to be 100% on top of his game for his game to have impact. But when he's on form, wow, what a player. He really is a master of his craft. He's one of those, he reminds me sometimes of Eden Hazard in the way that, you know, he's got a low centre of gravity. He's got firm buttocks, shall we say. Knows how to protect the ball. You know what I mean? A little guy who's pretty strong. Hazard had to learn that when he went to England to protect the ball. Yeah, and Fekir's like that. You know, he can look like he's almost crouched over the ball before springing away from a defender. He's really impressive. He's got a great shot on him. Fantastic free kick taker as well. In France, we've seen him score from the halfway line. You know, this is the stage for him, and I really hope that he takes it and plays a great game for Lyon.
What they did against City, Matt, just one last point on that, was they really pressed City in the first 20 minutes. So will they have the nerve to try and do the same in the new camp and not just watch Barca play, not just watch them knock it around? I don't know. It's a much different game to a first game in the Champions League group stage. The pressure's on, and it will be much harder for them to do it.
But they can do it. I think that anyone that says it's all over, that Lyon can't do it now, they should have scored away, they should have a lead from the first half, well, they can do it. That's the bottom line. In football, we get examples of it every week. Lyon can do it, there's no doubt.
Well, listeners, if you do have any questions, preferably not about Nabil Fekir's buttocks, although Darren will endeavour to answer them, you can
to investigate.
You can contact us. You can email your question in. Our email address is ligue1podcast@gmail.com. Now, Ligue 1 is written Ligue, Ligue 1, the number, podcast, all one word, @gmail.com. Or you can go onto at Ligue1_ENG, and you can send your questions in with the hashtag Ligue1podcast. That almost concludes our latest pod. But before we go, we're going to take you on a little voyage. It's our Bon Voyage segment. At the end of the show, we look ahead to next weekend's games, and I'm going to hand over to Robbie now. Robbie, where would you like to go next weekend?
I will be at the Parc des Princes, obviously. It's not far from here. What a surprise. It's about a kilometre and a half here from where we are recording this podcast. I'm heading out to the training ground in a couple of minutes' time for a press conference with Thomas Tuchel. I will be at the Parc des Princes. I would have enjoyed saying, because it's going to be a huge party and it's against our biggest rivals here in France, the Classique, Paris Saint-Germain versus Marseille. Paris with an incredible record over the last few years as well. Haven't lost at home to Marseille since 2009. Everything was pointing towards this being a fantastic evening for Paris Saint-Germain. Now I would suggest people to tune in or get to the game if you can, because I think we're going to see just a rare insight in its natural habitat of how a French fan can turn, possibly not against his club, but against his players or her players, which is something...
Is there going to be a grève d'encouragement? Because sometimes they do this in France. They love a grève, which is a strike. And the fans have
Everyone
been
talking... in France loves a strike. You don't have to be a football fan to love a strike.
They've been talking about going on, like not encouraging their team, i.e. staying silent.
I think we can expect that. It was one of... I remember when I first arrived in France in 2000, and I went to the Parc des Princes. I got my season ticket at very little expense at that time, and sitting in the end behind the goal, and nobody cheering, nobody saying anything. I was a little bit confused because the atmosphere in the Parc des Princes back in those days was quite something to behold. And then someone explained to me, I didn't want to speak too much English because at times it could get a little bit touchy there as well. An amazing experience and a first time for me to see fans on strike. I suspect we could see fans on strike. We could see fans overtly angry against their side. And I think it's something the players will have to accept because the players need redemption. And the only way that they can find redemption for what happened last Wednesday night is on the pitch. It's by beating Marseille. Perhaps they're lucky that it's Marseille because they had the fans and the players have a common enemy in this case, which is Olympique de Marseille, Parc des Princes, Sunday night, 9 o'clock. I'll be there. Bon voyage.
We will have in-depth analysis on PSG Marseille in Le Beau Jeu podcast next week. We'll also hear more from Raphael, the Lyon player who has given us an exclusive interview. That concludes the latest edition of Le Beau Jeu podcast from Darren Tulett, David Crossan, Robbie Thompson and me, Matt Spiro. It's time to say goodbye. We will see you again very soon.
Ciao, ciao. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Oh, the pass is brilliant for Pepe. That's over.
Saint-Etienne has surely won it in the 89th minute.
Payet. Oh, what a goal.
And Kylian Mbappe wraps it up.